Overlord, directed by Julius Avery, is a horror film that takes place just before D-Day during World War II. A handful of American soldiers land in French territory where they're confronted by German soldiers. The small group of American soldiers have been given the mission of destroying a German radio tower in an old church, and it's up to these men to figure out how to accomplish that mission despite being majorly outnumbered. However, as they get closer to the tower, they realize the Germans are performing unusual experiments in a nearby laboratory, which causes them great concern. As a small group of American soldiers learn more about what these horrific experiments actually are, they attempt to put a stop to it. Alright, so Overlord looked like a really cool film. I was always under the impression that this was another film that would fit somewhere in the Cloverfield universe, but let me just set the record straight now and tell you that it's not. It has no connection to any of the other Cloverfield films, and it's just its own solo movie. There's not any references to anything you've seen before from the other Cloverfield movies, so don't expect anything along those lines. Despite that, I enjoyed Overlord despite me expecting it to be connected to Cloverfield in some way. It was probably about as good as I expected it to be. It turns out to do a lot of things pretty well and some things a little bit below average, a little bit subpar. What that ultimately results in is a film that's certainly good, definitely unique, but not quite in the upper echelon of recent horror films. Overlord starts with a bang though. The opening scene is visceral. It's exciting and it's beautifully horrific to look at, and I feel like that's honestly where most of the budget went. The opening scene had me absolutely hooked, and it reminded me of a flashier, more modern Saving Private Ryan. It was really difficult to watch, but at the same time extremely gripping. However, what directly follows that scene I didn't quite love so much. There's a few problems I have with Overlord, one of them being the first act. I found the scenes directly after the opening scene to be somewhat dull and uninteresting, especially considering the characters and the performances that I never quite found to be of high quality. There's just not much interesting going on during this period of time. Things don't really start picking up until one of the characters stumbles into the secret German lab and sees the horrors that lie within it. That's when the film becomes scary and interesting for that matter, because the high quality horror elements that the film does best are introduced into the story at that point. If you're looking for quality horror, then Overlord definitely has what you're looking for. But I do think it relies a little bit too much on jump scares a little bit too frequently, but I found the film overall to be very scary when it wants to be. There's some scenes that are genuinely terrifying, and I think that there is a looming sense of dread that exists whenever the soldiers are anywhere close to that lab. There's a lot of horrific imagery as well, and once they're in there, there's definitely some scenes where you're probably gonna wanna look away because they don't shy away from showing you some of the more gruesome aspects. Horror-wise, I think that Overlord definitely delivers. It's one of the scarier films I've seen this year for sure. I don't feel the performances are that great though. I found Jovan Adepo to be good as a lead here, but I found everyone else around him to be subpar at best. I think the acting and the characters themselves is probably the weakest part of this movie. It feels like a setup we've seen a million times before, but with a slight twist on it, a creative twist at that. Given, like I said, the twist is creative and interesting, it helps add an atmosphere for the characters to thrive a little bit more successfully, but I still found them all to be fairly unmemorable. I never quite connected with any of these characters, and that's always a problem for me. I felt they were more just pieces on the board to be placed in scary situations than they were actual characters or actual people that I should care about. Maybe that's the goal with this type of film, but I just never find my emotional investment as quite high as it should be, with this type of setup. I don't feel like I ever felt truly connected to these characters, and that makes me sort of detached emotionally from everything except just watching them go through some horrific stuff. That said, I did find the film to be a creative experience, like I mentioned. It takes actual history and mixes it with Nazi zombies, and it does so in a way that's not only scary, but fun. There's a creativity to the way in which the zombies actually exist, if you can even call them zombies at all. This was an interesting concept, and it's executed well enough, and I think that the execution will ultimately satisfy those that are just looking for a scary movie with some Nazi zombies in it. Just some zombies in general, honestly. I do want to provide insight into the whole zombie thing, just a little bit more though. These are zombies per se, but it's not like a full-on zombie attack or anything. You see a handful of people that have been experimented on and you see the effects of that, but it's not your typical zombie film at all. I think this is actually to its benefit because the film has a unique identity. It stands out in the crowd amongst recent horror movies because it's different, and it's certainly a different take on the zombie genre. Overall though, I think Overlord is a good time if you're looking for tension, horror, and suspense placed in a creative package. There's definitely some issues that prevent it from achieving greatness, but it's a solid horror film nonetheless. As for the pros-cons, for the pros, I thought Overlord delivers lots of tension and quality scares, a creative and fresh take on the zombie genre, and one outstanding opening scene that really is one of the more exciting scenes I've seen in quite a while. As for the cons, I think the first act is pretty slow and dull after the opening scene, and the characters and performances are pretty weak pretty consistently. I'm going to give Overlord an 8 out of 10 and recommend you check this one out in theaters if you're looking for a quality horror experience. Certainly not a must-see by any means, but one I think most horror fans will probably enjoy. So did you guys see Overlord yet? What did you think of it? And if not, let me know why not. And also let me know your favorite movie with zombies in it. I'm honestly going to go with Shaun of the Dead here. That movie is really great and it holds up super well. Either way, this is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next review.